This happened a couple of years ago, and some details might be a bit hazy now. After gym class, we usually changed in the locker room. My teacher had always seemed a bit odd, but nothing that raised any real alarms, until one particular day. It had been a long workout, and the atmosphere in the room was charged with chatter as the other girls swapped stories and rumors while changing into their regular clothes. As the minutes passed, I remained in the changing room alone. I was quiet and tended to take my time getting ready, which left me behind the others. The silence grew thick around me, with only the sounds of lockers closing and the rustle of clothing breaking the stillness. Then, I started to hear something, a deep, heavy breathing. It sounded distant at first, like it was coming from somewhere far away. Curiosity pushed me closer to the noise. I felt my heart rate pick up as I crept towards the source. What I saw next was something I'll never forget. My gym teacher was there, lurking in the shadows, peering in with the creepiest expression on his face. Panic surged through me, and I shoved the door open, desperate to escape that room. As I bolted out, I could almost feel him trying to call out to me, acting confused, like he was searching for something else or trying to explain. But I didn't stop to listen. I ran straight to my next class, heart pounding. I never spoke about what happened. Perhaps it was foolish not to. I just wanted to erase the memory from my mind. The encounter had left me feeling uneasy and disturbed. That day changed everything for me regarding gym class. The thought of my creepy teacher lurking around made me dread returning to that environment. I could never shake off the feeling of vulnerability, nor could I imagine ever wanting to see him again. One night I found myself at the gym around 10 p.m. I had worked all day and my gym was open all night, so it felt like the perfect time to unwind. As I moved through my routine, I got lost in my workout. Out of nowhere, a short man with dark hair appeared and asked me what I was doing later. It struck me as strange. I chose to ignore him, pretending I couldn't hear him over the music blasting through my headphones. After a few moments, he eventually walked away. Once I finished my workout, I made my way to the locker room. I needed to grab my keys and check my reflection in the mirror. As I entered, I noticed the same man sitting on a bench, staring directly at me. It felt unsettling, his gaze fixed on my every move. I skipped looking at myself in the mirror, grabbed my keys, and headed for the bathroom. I noticed he started to follow me, so I quickly ducked into a stall. When I emerged, he was still at the urinal, watching me. I felt a knot in my stomach but ignored him and started to leave the gym. He followed me out, his footsteps echoing in the quiet space. Once again, he asked what I was doing tonight and what my name was. This time, I couldn't pretend I didn't hear him, so I simply said I wasn't interested and hurried to my car. A week later, I was back at the gym, around the same time. Everything seemed normal at first. I worked out, chatted with some friends, and tried to forget about that strange encounter. But then I caught sight of him again, standing against an empty wall, staring at me. I attempted to brush it off, focusing on my workout. But no matter where I went, he seemed to shadow me. I stayed close to my friends, hoping he would lose interest, but once they left, he followed suit. When I finally gathered my things to leave around 11:30, I realized my phone had died. A twinge of anxiety gripped me, but I pushed it aside as I walked to my car. That's when I noticed something unusual. There was a rose tucked into my truck's door handle. A rush of panic coursed through me, and I ran back inside to find someone who could help. The last thing I wanted was to confront whatever situation this might lead to. After the staff removed the rose, I sped home, my heart racing as I replayed the encounter in my mind. A few days later, I returned for another workout. I was relieved not to see him until I got to my truck. To my horror, he was parked right next to me, standing in front of his car. I could feel his gaze on me as I climbed inside. Now, every time I went to the gym at night, he was there, waiting for me, asking those bizarre questions that made my skin crawl. I talked to the staff about it, and they reassured me that he was new to the area and simply trying to be friendly. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my rejection wasn't getting through to him. I started waking up hours earlier to avoid the late-night crowd, hoping to dodge him entirely. Yet, even in the early hours, he was still lurking around, watching me. Then one night I found a rose on my windshield, along with a phone wire wrapped around my door handle. I snapped a photo, feeling a sense of dread settle in my stomach. To my horror, he managed to add me on Snapchat. I had no idea how he found out my name or recognized my car in the first place. It was as if he was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I felt trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. With each passing day, I became more uneasy. The gym, once a sanctuary, transformed into a place filled with anxiety. I needed to do something to protect myself, but I wasn't sure what. The feeling of being watched crept into my daily life, turning my simple workouts into a chilling experience. I started avoiding the gym altogether, opting for home workouts instead. But even in the safety of my own space, I couldn't escape the sensation of eyes on me. The thought that he might show up anywhere. Each ring of my phone made my heart race, expecting it to be him. The sense of dread continued to build as days turned into weeks. The lurking presence in my life made everything feel uncertain. I began questioning my own safety, wondering if I should report him to the authorities. Each evening I kept my curtains drawn tight, hoping to shut out any possibility of him finding me. I felt a weight of paranoia settle over me like a dark cloud. The nights were the worst. I could almost hear him outside, waiting for me to slip up. In a desperate attempt to reclaim my sense of security, I decided to change my routine completely. I found a new gym across town, one where I wouldn't have to look over my shoulder. The decision felt liberating, but there was still a part of me that felt he might follow, that this wouldn't be the last time I saw him. As I settled into my new gym, I hoped for the best, but remained cautious. The haunting thought of that night in the locker room, of those roses and wires, lingered in the back of my mind. I wanted to believe I was safe, but the shadows of the past made it hard to trust. In the end, I realized I needed to be proactive, to take control of my own narrative. I started to document every encounter, every strange incident, and planned to approach the authorities. It was time to stand up for myself. I had to believe that no one should have to live in fear, especially not in a place that was meant to be a refuge. I took a deep breath and prepared to face whatever came next, determined to find a way to turn this nightmare into something I could overcome. When I was 19, I got really into weightlifting at my university's rec center. It was a massive complex with multiple weight rooms, 2 indoor tracks, an Olympic swimming pool, the works. I'd hit the gym 4 to 5 times a week, usually cooling off with laps in the pool afterward. It became a routine for me, and I felt comfortable in that environment, surrounded by people who shared the same interest in fitness. One day, while I was in the weight room, a guy named Brett approached me. He looked older, probably in his late 30s or early 40s. The rec center wasn't just for students. Anyone could get a membership, so I didn't think much of it. He seemed friendly enough, and at first it felt like just casual gym conversation. He asked me where I was from and where I worked. Back then I was working at a grocery store in my hometown, which was just a town over from the university. Looking back, I realize I was naive to be so open with that information. I didn't see him every time I went to the gym, but it was common to run into him a couple of times a week. We'd talk for a few minutes, but over time, I started to feel like he was getting a little too familiar. One day, Brett mentioned that he had been by the grocery store where I worked, but didn't see me there. Then he asked what my schedule was. That's when I knew something wasn't right. I brushed it off, telling him my schedule changed every week and got back to my workout, but from then on, I tried to keep my distance. Not long after that, I was heading into work to start my shift, and as I walked through the doors, there he was, standing in the foyer, just hanging around. He called out to me, trying to start a conversation, but I told him I was at work and couldn't talk. The encounter left me unsettled. After that, I stopped interacting with him at the gym. He would try to talk to me, but I kept it short and distant. Something about him showing up at my job without me ever mentioning the exact location felt off, and I didn't want anything to do with him. The breaking point came one evening after I finished swimming laps. The pool's shower room was an open space with several shower stands, each designed so multiple people could use them at once. It wasn't anything I thought about. I had grown up swimming there, and the setup was just normal. I was alone in the shower, my swim trunks hanging on a nearby rack, when I glanced toward the doorway that led to the locker area. That's when I saw him, Brett, peeking around the doorway watching me. The moment I saw him, he quickly disappeared. By the time I finished up and got dressed, he was long gone. I didn't waste any time. I went straight to the service counter and reported what had happened. I only knew his first name, but they seemed to know exactly who I was talking about. After that, I never saw him again at the gym. It was a relief, but the whole experience stuck with me for a long time. I started my sophomore year in 2017 with typical excitement and nerves. Gym class was one of the first periods, and I noticed a kid I knew picking a locker close to mine. At first I didn't mind. He seemed chill. But as the weeks passed, I began to notice something unsettling. He kept peering at me while I changed. I figured he was just being friendly or maybe a little socially awkward, so I tried not to think too much about it. However, things escalated. His glances turned into outright staring, especially during the swim unit when we started doing laps. While I swam, he began to swim closer to me, and I could feel his presence invading my personal space. When we interacted in the water, he acted normally, but there were moments when he brushed against me with his leg. It felt strange, and I instinctively backed away. A few days later, during a back-and-forth swimming routine, he got even closer than before. There was plenty of room for him to swim elsewhere, but he chose to encroach on my space. After that interaction, I decided to change my locker to a spot diagonally facing away from him, hoping it would provide me with some relief. Once I made the switch, things improved a little. He didn't stare at me as often, although I would still catch him looking when our eyes met. However, he found new ways to get closer during gym class. I'd see him squeezing through the crowd to stand right in front of me or linger uncomfortably close behind. It was disconcerting. I tried surrounding myself with friends, thinking it might deter him. But no matter how hard I tried, he always managed to appear near me. After some observation, I realized he was waiting for me. After changing, he would come out of the locker area right behind me. I needed to know for sure if he was trying to be friendly or if something else was going on. One day, while we were waiting to switch back to regular clothes, I left early, curious to see if he would follow me. He never left early, but when I glanced back, I spotted him in the reflection, trailing behind me. Panic surged through me, and I broke into a run, weaving through the hallways until I reached my next class. I could feel my heart racing, but I lost him. Days passed, and his behavior didn't change. I decided to conduct one last test to figure out his intentions. My plan was to change quickly and sneak into the gym before anyone else. I climbed the bleachers, finding a spot where I could observe the entrance without being seen. Once I was settled, I watched the door, my heart pounding as I waited. Within moments, he walked in, scanning the gym. I felt a chill run down my spine when he muttered, "Where the hell is he?" I held my breath, frozen in place. He exited the gym, but I decided to stay put, wanting to see what he would do next. He tried another entrance and suddenly spotted me perched above him. Our eyes locked for a brief moment, and I felt a wave of coldness wash over me as he recognized I had been watching him. Without saying a word, he turned and walked away. After that, he continued to follow me during class. I felt uncomfortable in every space we shared. I debated confronting him, but wasn't sure how to go about it. Even in crowded classes, he found ways to get close. He would bump into me or stand too near, glancing my way with that unsettling gaze. As the year continued, I felt the pressure build. It was a constant battle to shake him off, to maintain my personal space, and I resorted to changing quickly to avoid him catching a glimpse. I just wanted some peace, to feel safe in my own school. If he ever listens to this, I hope he understands. I didn't want to be rude, but it felt necessary to say, "Please stop. It's exhausting and creepy, and I wish he would just respect my space." I work at a gym where a man frequents who until recently I had considered harmless. He has a membership, but he doesn't really work out. Instead, he just hangs around, sipping coffee and bothering people. He's in his 50s, often wearing short shorts and tight tank tops that don't fit him well. He talks loudly, repeating himself constantly. It's exhausting. When he gets frustrated, he insists that I should understand, saying it's complicated and he can't explain it. Despite my attempts to show I comprehend, he keeps circling back to the same points. I've been told multiple times that I'm the only one left with any patience for him. I've always made an effort to be kind, knowing he likely doesn't have anyone else in his life. When other gym members complain about him, which happens often since he tends to approach anyone nearby with conversation, I try to defend him. I explain that he has some challenges, and that while he can be irritating, I believe he's harmless. However, things have changed recently. He started talking about every young woman who works there. I overheard him telling a story about a 17-year-old girl he met, claiming she was attractive. He genuinely believes that every girl is flirting with him when they respond kindly or engage in small talk. Our gym has a pool, so the lifeguards wear one-piece swimsuits. He's taken to commenting on how they look in their uniforms. They're all in their early 20s. He often brings up how he thinks he has a chance with the female managers, saying one must really like him because she casually said hello. The most unsettling part is that he makes up stories about employees supposedly expressing interest in him. I confronted one of the women he claimed was interested, and she was baffled, denying any such conversation ever happened. Just when I thought it couldn't get creepier, a male member approached me with a complaint. He travels for work and parks his semi in our lot once a month. He told me that this man has been acting strangely toward him. He described how he stands outside, staring at him while he's in the truck. If he moves, the man will even get in his own car, turn it around, and continue watching him, sometimes for hours. Last night while I was working, he approached me with a bizarre topic. He started talking about how much he would like to get a gun. I felt a chill run down my spine. His comments about firearms were alarming, especially in the context of everything else. I tried to dismiss it, thinking he was just rambling again, but the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. The gym was starting to feel like a place I needed to watch my back in. The friendly atmosphere I'd enjoyed had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that his behavior was escalating, and I wondered what it would take for someone to intervene. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, worried that he might approach me again with something even more disturbing. I decided it was time to keep my distance and be more aware of my surroundings when I was at work. The next few days passed with a heavy weight on my shoulders. I noticed how others reacted to him too. Conversations would halt when he walked by, eyes would roll, and people would exchange uneasy glances. It was becoming harder to defend him, even to myself. One afternoon, I was restocking supplies in the break room when I heard him outside. He was talking loudly again, his voice carrying through the gym. It sounded like he was trying to engage someone in conversation. I felt a knot in my stomach as I peered through the window to see him standing too close to a couple of younger employees. I watched as they shifted awkwardly, glancing around as if looking for an escape. I stepped outside, hoping to redirect his attention. I greeted him and attempted to steer the conversation to something neutral. He rambled on, his words blending into an unintelligible stream. I nodded, trying to signal that I was listening, but my mind was racing. Suddenly, he brought up the gun again, saying how it would make him feel more powerful. My heart raced at his words. I couldn't ignore the implications anymore. I knew I had to report his behavior to my manager. It was the only way to ensure the safety of my coworkers and the other members. After my shift, I went to my manager and laid everything out. I told her about his comments, the complaints from other members, and how uncomfortable everyone had started to feel. She listened intently, and I could see the concern in her eyes. She promised to address it immediately. The next day, there was an announcement regarding the gym's code of conduct and a reminder for everyone to report any inappropriate behavior. I felt a wave of relief, but the uneasiness remained. I was hyper-aware of my surroundings, knowing he could show up at any moment. A week later, I was in the break room when I heard a commotion outside. I rushed to the door, heart pounding to see the man being escorted out by security. Members were murmuring, and I felt a mix of fear and relief wash over me. I knew it was the right decision to speak up, but I also felt a lingering dread of what might happen next. The gym returned to its usual atmosphere, but I remained cautious. I kept a lookout for any sign of him returning, hoping that he would find somewhere else to go. I didn't want to feel afraid at work anymore, and I knew everyone else felt the same way. As I continued my shifts, I remained vigilant, the memory of his unsettling comments etched in my mind. I hoped this would be the end of it, but a small part of me couldn't help but wonder if he would return. I reminded myself to stay alert, knowing that I couldn't let my guard down. Each day brought a new sense of determination to protect the space I loved. The gym was more than just a job, it was a community. I wasn't going to let fear dictate my experience or the experiences of others. In the end, I learned the importance of speaking up and taking action. It was a lesson in safety and awareness that I would carry with me, always remembering the need to look out for myself and those around me.